If you're new to fly fishing and are ready to rig up your rod in the fastest and easiest way possible, stick around because I'm going to show you how to set up your fly line, leader, and tippet step by step. Now, before we dive into the nitty-gritty, let's take a big picture overview of what we're trying to accomplish. Here, we have our fly line system. Coming off the reel is our fly line, which will attach to a leader. And we can either attach that leader directly to a fly, or we can use tippet to create different rigs. Tippet can also be used to lengthen our leader if that thin end of the leader gets too short from getting caught in a tree. Yes, it happens to all of us. Or if we re-rig and change out our flies a bunch. Now, if you're not super familiar with the differences between leaders and tippet, that's no problem. Go watch this video right here. It's gonna give you a really solid foundation, and then you can come back to this video. Now that we're clear on what our fly line system is supposed to look like, let's put it together step by step. First, we'll need to connect our fly line to our leader. The way you do this will depend on if your fly line has a welded loop or not. If it does, you'll want to go with a loop-to-loop connection, also referred to as a handshake knot. If not, you'll want to go with a nail knot. Since the majority of fly lines these days have a welded loop, we're going to go through the loop-to-loop connection. But if you don't have that loop, or if you want to learn the nail knot, I'll link a step-by-step tutorial in the video description. Before we do anything, let's take our leader out of the package and uncoil it. To do this, we'll hold it with 3 fingers and untwist the thick end of the leader. After about 6 or 7 turns, the leader will come undone. Then you'll want to straighten out the leader by holding one end tight and stretching it out all the way down to the other end. Now we're ready to attach our fly line to the leader. First, we'll take the end of our fly line and string it through the loop on the thick end of our leader. The most common mistake when it comes to this knot is mixing up the first step and stringing the leader through the fly line loop. This will create a cutting hitch, which, yes, can end up damaging or cutting your fly line loop. So remember, put your fly line through the leader. Then we'll find the other end of our leader, the thin end, and bring it to the party. We'll take that thin end of the leader and string it through the loop on the end of our fly line. Then pull the rest of the leader through the loop. That knot on the end of our leader can sometimes struggle to get through the fly line loop, but if you just get in there and push on it a bit, it'll slide through. Then pull tight and you're ready to rumble. Now that we have our leader attached to our fly line, let's attach that leader to a fly. There are a number of different options for this, but the most popular one, the one that I hear used most amongst the anglers that I know, the one I use personally, is the clinch knot. So let's dive into that one. To make this tutorial easy to follow along, I've got a big hook that will represent our fly and this thick green braided line to represent our leader or tippet. We'll take our leader and string it through the eye of the hook, then pull out a bit of leader on the other side. This is our tag end. Now we'll pinch the line just above the hook eyelet with our left hand, then twist the tag end around the longer end of our leader. You'll notice I'm alternating between pinching the tag end between my thumb and middle finger and thumb and pointer finger as I go around. If you're using a thicker leader or tippet, you'll go around fewer times than a smaller tippet. Now I'll pinch the tag end so it's angled towards the hook and use my left pointer finger to keep the line tight as I bring the tag end to the hook and thread it through the loop in front of the eyelet. Then I'll transfer that tag end to my left hand, hold it tight, and pull the longer end with my right hand. Now all that's left is to trim the tag end and we have our clinch knot. But before you start practicing, I think it's worth seeing it tied with the actual materials you'll be using. So we have our fly and the end of our leader, string it through the eyelet, pinch and twist it around, Thread the tag end through the loop. Hold the tag end tight, pull the long end of the leader. Trim the tag end, and boom, you've got a clinch knot. It's also worth mentioning that the clinch knot can be used for other things like attaching tippet to the bend of a fly's hook if you're doing a dry dropper or standard nymph rig. It's a super useful knot. Now that we have that leader attached to a fly, time to get excited because we're ready to fish. But if we change our flies or we get caught in another tree, yep, against all odds, it is possible to do that twice in one day. The thin end of our leader, it's gonna get shorter and shorter, and we'll need to replace it with some tippet. There are also other rigs where we'll attach flies to something called a tag end. And that is when we'll use the triple surgeon's knot. To make this tutorial easy to follow along, I've got some thick braided line in green to represent our leader or first piece of tippet, and blue to represent another piece of tippet. We'll take both and line them up end to end in opposite directions. Then form a loop with both strands laying on top. Now we'll take the end that has the longer piece of tippet, our blue end, and go back behind and up through the loop with both the leader and tippet strands. This is a surgeon's knot. Twice. This is a double surgeon's knot. And 3 times. Yep, you guessed it. This is a triple surgeon's knot. Now we'll grab the 2 ends with our left hand and the other 2 ends with our right hand, and we'll pull in opposite directions, tightening the knot. Now we'll either trim one of the tag ends and tie that to a fly, or if we're just lengthening our leader or attaching a piece of tippet, we'll trim both. And there's our finalized triple surgeon's knot. But before you start practicing, I think it's worth seeing it tied with the actual materials you'll be using. So we have our leader on the left and tippet on the right. Put them together going in opposite directions. Form a loop. Thread them both through the loop once, then twice, and 3 times. And with real leader and tippet material, it's good to moisten the knot so that it easily slides into place and doesn't heat up and damage the material. Now get a hold of all 4 ends, pull tight, trim one tag end if you're attaching a fly, or both if you're extending your leader or attaching some tippet. And you're ready to fish. Now, I know, you're excited to rush out from wherever you're watching this and get out on the water. But before you do, I really want to encourage you to practice these 3 knots until you can do them without any help. No videos, no cheat sheets. It's going to be pretty frustrating if you get out to the river, pull out your fly box, and you can't remember how to tie the clinch knot. And if you're anything like me, love to fish in off-the-grid places without cell service, rewatching that tutorial, it's not gonna be an option. Do yourself a favor, rewatch those tutorials, practice those knots, and you'll be happy you did it. Especially because now you'll know the basic knots needed to set up a few dry fly rigs. And I mean, life isn't complete until you've caught a fish on a dry fly. We'll walk you through how to set up the best, most effective dry fly rigs step by step in the next video, which you can watch right here.